just gave a pretty good overview as to what Warner Media is. Just in practice, we are a very, very large company. For those of you who were used to seeing things like Turner, because obviously we're in Georgia. I'm just south of Atlanta as well. Obviously, you're a little bit further south of Atlanta, but for most of you in the Georgia area, you're used to seeing the Turner brands, the CNNs, the Cartoon Networks, and TBS, TNT, TCM, those different networks. So Warner Media is that plus HBO plus Warner Brothers and every subsidiary under those companies. So if we look at just what Warner Media is in general, it kind of breaks down into these baskets. We have studios and networks, so obviously WB is the motion picture side of it. A lot of the Turner networks that you knew before on that legacy Turner side are in that media networks and original content. We're gonna hop over to the far side. We've got news and sports, so CNN, its various subsidiaries, HLN, but then you have Turner Sports and Bleacher Report. So think of this as your live studio material, right? So that's why it's all basketed together in news and sports. International, there's over 125 different international brands under that, most of which you're probably used to seeing here in the US, but massive organizations down in Latin and South America, as well as that European market and the South Asian market. And then, of course, our direct-to-consumer product, which launched back in May, HBO Max, is a massive undertaking right now. And through all these, there's a lot of internships across the board. So if we go into the internship side of things, we have 3 sessions. We just started our fall session not too long ago, so our fall interns are virtually on campus. And before I get into this, I should say one update to this is the spring and summer 2021 internships will be fully virtual as well. So because of the amount of time it's going to take before we'll know when we can get people on our campuses, we didn't want to take chances on that, nor did we want to delay the process any further. So we just went ahead and made the decision a couple of weeks ago. We're going to make them all virtual. For the spring semester, you're going to start to see these internships pop up probably as early as tomorrow, but probably in the next 2 weeks, you'll see them pop up. They won't be posted for very long. I would say second week in November will be up and down. So you're looking at 3.5 to 4 weeks that they will be posted live to submit your resumes to. Some are a little bit longer. We're going to post those starting the week of Thanksgiving, and they'll be posted for the most part until the last Friday in January, which I believe is Friday the 29th of January. But as you're looking at these different sessions, you might want to notice that spring coming up is part-time. So this is really good if you want to do work while you're in class. We'll typically say maximum of 24 hours. It is paid the same as everybody else. So for the Atlanta positions, for DC, for CNN en Español out of Miami, they will all be $15 an hour. For the New York and LA positions, they will be $18 an hour, and then it raises for master's level students as well. So just something to think about. For summer, though, it is fully full-time. Even in a virtual setting, they'll expect 35 to 40 hours a week for those positions. Just 1 second. All right. So looking at this, summer's a 10-week program, fall and spring are typically 12-week programs. We're going to do a lot of programs for the interns during that time. Obviously, a lot more of the developmental program than networking programs will happen in the summertime because everyone is more or less on the same schedule. It's for the most part a 9 to 5 schedule, depending on your time zone. But for fall and spring, everyone's schedules are different because it usually follows along the pattern of what your class schedule is, what you can fit in. So if maybe you're working 9 hours a day, but only working Tuesday and Thursday, right? That's fine. Maybe you're working 8 hours a day, but you're working Monday, Wednesday, Friday. However you work that out, when the time comes, they'll typically work around your schedule, but they won't let you, like if it's a daytime group, right? If it's a group that only works daytimes, then they're probably not going to let you work nights and vice versa, that kind of thing. And I do have to say, because we're in this virtual setting, one of the things that we've had to come up with is if you do end up getting an internship with the West Coast positions, just consider the time difference. You'll probably come in a little later virtually and leave a little bit later. So it's not really going to fit nicely between that 9 to 5 Eastern window. It might be more like a noon to 8 Eastern window, just so you have a full idea and understanding. Again, when I say opportunities in New York, or you'll see LA and Atlanta, we're virtual right now. It's just the location of origin for these. When we are not virtual, which I'm hoping beyond hope that that we'll be back in a live setting by next fall. But as you can see, there's a lot of different opportunities here. Now, most of these opportunities in New York are either going to be on the CNN side or the HBO side. That's kind of where they fall for the most part, although there are some legal and sort of JD stuff that's thrown in there. But the vast majority of what you're seeing in front of you would be either CNN or HBO. And I'd say it'd be 2 to 1 HBO or CNN to HBO, just because of the size of the company and the location. Getting into LA, this is almost exclusively Warner Brothers, although there's a little bit on the TBS TNT original side. There's a little bit on the Cartoon Network Studios side. So that's for the heavy animation type positions or the heavy creative positions. Those are in LA. And then there's a little bit of HBO in Santa Monica, and that's more on the development side and programming for HBO. Atlanta is a little bit of everything. So obviously we've got CNN's global hub here, but we also have the hub for all the Turner programs here. There's not going to be much outside of your legacy Turner brands, but a lot of Cartoon Network, a lot of sports, a lot of studios, a lot of CNN, a lot of marketing, a lot of research. So if you're into that, the programming and editorial and production side of things, Atlanta's probably the way to go. Whereas when you get into some of those live broadcasts, or not live broadcasts, the scripted broadcasts rather, that's going to be more West Coast with the WB side. Seattle is very tech heavy. I bring that up because these are more engineering based positions. So these are specifically HBO Max. So you're going to see the heavy in the UX side and this technical program management, but think engineering background for these, because they're very, very heavy. You're competing with Silicon Valley with this. So they do tend to pay quite a bit higher. I think the average pay for a Seattle based internship is going to be right around $35, $40 an hour. Now, the cost of living when we go back live in Seattle is astronomical as compared to Georgia. So just you got to take that into account. You'll end up keeping more of it probably in the Atlanta and some of the East Coast positions. Okay, so on the creative side, we're a little bit all over the place, right? On the HBO Max side, there's actually quite a lot in the virtual space that are hiring for HBO Max. For creative, most of them are going to be Burbank based just by origin, but again, in a virtual setting, it's not going to really matter. There's a couple that are New York origin, maybe 1 or 2 down here in Atlanta. But this gives you an idea on the breakdown. So HBO Max, HBO, the WB, DC Comics, in this case, not talking about Washington, DC, but DC Comics, WB Interactive. So we do have partnerships with things like Harry Potter, right? We've got brand development and franchise development. The animation roles are there. Now, I will tell you that the Kayak Group, which is, let me explain what that is. That's kids, young adults, and classics. So that's Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, and Turner Classic Movies. They are probably not going to be hiring until the summer session. So I don't expect to see any of the spring internships in that specific location, although everybody else, you will see them coming up pretty soon. But this should give you a pretty decent idea of what's out there from an internship standpoint. One thing I did want to point out is where you see that Legacy Turner brands at a Cartoon Network, you see the games production QA. So in the Cartoon Network games, these are less games design, but more QA. So we're letting you play video games. We're paying you to play video games and break them for us. Essentially, that's what the job entails. So it's kind of a neat opportunity to go through there, and you're literally playing video games all day. But then you got to take a lot of notes, right? That's the flip side of it. Take a lot of notes, try and figure out glitches with that, so we can fix them and make them more adaptable and work better in that online and mobile environment. So it gives you an idea. Whereas one thing you're going to see starting in summer is you're going to see DC and Warner Brothers games division ramp up. So if you're into more of the games design side of things, that's going to be on the WB side, and that'll be for summer of 2021. The sports side. So there's a lot of different sports positions out there. Less of them are going to get you in the studio, and obviously first, going back to that virtual setting, it's a little bit different right now. There's a couple, however, when you get into sort of that NBA content marketing, where you will be working with some of the talent with that talent services. Obviously, it's in the name, so you get a chance to at least virtually rub elbows with a couple of the talent we have in there. So just keep in mind that for summer, especially, summer tends to be the slower time for the sports. We'll have baseball ramping up, but we're just getting into the NBA off season. We're not into football yet, so it's kind of quiet in the summer by comparison. Whereas fall and spring for sports is going to ramp up. Obviously, we do a lot of work for March Madness. When we have March Madness, I assume that we will be back up and running for March Madness in some form or fashion. It may be April Madness, but it'll be there one way or the other. So think about that. If you're into the sports side of things, I think spring is probably going to be your best bet, and we'll again get those out pretty soon. On the CNN is what it is. I worked for CNN I've been in this company a little over 16 and a half years. I started as a tour guide for the public tour in the CNN Center. So if you're familiar with the Atlanta area and you grew up there in any way, you probably ended up having to take the tour as part of a class growing up. And I might have been your tour guide back in the day, depending on how old you are. But for the CNN side, you've got the news bureau. So Atlanta, New York, DC are going to be your main bureaus, although we do have a few positions out in LA that are going to deal with more of that entertainment news piece. There's less in the virtual setting because most of those rely on going to red carpet events, which obviously aren't happening right now when we're not launching movies. These will be very heavy in the production editorial side. So if you're a writer, there's a lot of positions for you available out there. If you get into the video production side and the piecing together of shows, there's a lot of it out there. But I think CNN also has a lot of niche positions as well. So the health, if you have an interest in writing for science, right, then those positions are going to present themselves on the health side, especially right now. It's probably the second busiest division that we have next to politics for obvious reasons. It is an election year. Sports on the CNN side is more of a rotational position. So you rotate with Bleacher Report, but your primary duties are with CNN International, and you're doing production for a show called World Sport, which is the international sports show. So think less on the American football side, think more European football. So soccer is there, obviously the big key sport out there, but you're going to have everything from Olympic talk, because we're going to have to gear back up to the Olympics that was postponed until next year. So there'll be a lot going on in the summer for that as well. Image and sound is more studio production, so I'm not sure what that's going to look like in a virtual standing or if they continue to have that, but it is out there as well. Okay, so in order to be eligible, you do need to be a currently enrolled student. In past instances for Legacy Turner, we did allow post-grad interns. That has been sunsetted starting with the spring 2021 semester. So you do have to be enrolled in school. Now, obviously, if it's the summer between your junior and senior year, or the summer between your senior year and a registered year of master's program, then you're still eligible for that. You need